The Spalding Inn, New Hampshire Cold Case Files. Good evening. I'm Detective James Miller with the State Bureau of Investigation. For those of you joining my channel for the first time, I've spent the better part of 3 decades documenting cases that defy conventional explanation. The file I'm opening tonight has haunted New Hampshire's White Mountains for nearly a century. Before we begin, I must emphasize that what you're about to hear comes directly from official records, witness testimonies, and my own investigation into historical archives. I present these facts as they were documented, without embellishment or speculation, until my personal notes at the end. Case file, New Hampshire 1926 0038, date of initial report, June 18, 1926, status, unexplained. If you have a story, drop a comment below and subscribe to the channel. The Spalding Inn case began on June 18, 1926, though the building itself dates back to 1875 when it was constructed as a ski lodge catering to wealthy Boston families seeking respite in the White Mountains. What started as a simple missing persons report would evolve into one of New Hampshire's most enduring mysteries, one that continues to generate reports to this day. Let me take you back to that summer evening in 1926. The first official documentation comes from Whitefield Police Department. Officer Thomas Caldwell responded to a call from Eliza Spalding, proprietor of the inn that bore her family name. Her frantic call reported a guest had vanished from room 38, leaving behind all personal belongings including a half-packed suitcase. More disturbing, Mrs. Spalding reported hearing children's voices where no children stayed. The missing guest was identified as Professor William Harriman, 42, a historian from Dartmouth College who had been researching local indigenous folklore. According to the initial report, Harriman had checked in 3 days prior, requesting specifically to stay in room 38, a detail that would later prove significant. Officer Caldwell's report notes the room was in disarray upon his arrival. I quote directly, "Bedding thrown about, papers scattered across desk and floor, window open despite rain, temperature in room notably colder than hallway despite summer heat. No signs of struggle or violence observed." The officer conducted a search of the grounds, but found no trace of Harriman. Mrs. Spalding insisted no one had seen him leave the property. His automobile remained in the parking area, and the front desk clerk confirmed no taxi services had been called to the inn. The case might have remained a simple missing persons investigation, if not for what happened next. 2 days after Harriman's disappearance, a family of 4 checked into the Spalding Inn. The Marshalls, parents Robert and Catherine, along with their children Elizabeth, 10, and James, 8, were assigned to room 36, 2 doors down from the now vacant room 38. According to statements given by Catherine Marshall on June 21, 1926, their first night passed uneventfully. On the second night, however, both children reported hearing other children inviting them to play in room 38. The parents dismissed this as imagination until young Elizabeth went missing from her bed at approximately 3:15 a.m. I'll quote from Robert Marshall's statement. "I woke to Catherine shaking me, saying Elizabeth wasn't in her bed. We checked the bathroom, then the hallway. That's when we heard her giggling from behind the door of room 38. When I tried the handle, it was locked. I called her name and she answered, but her voice sounded strange, distant somehow. When the night manager finally unlocked the door, the room was empty, completely empty. A search of the inn and surrounding woods commenced immediately. Elizabeth Marshall was discovered at 5:47 a.m., sitting alone on the edge of the property near a small creek. Her clothes were dry despite the overnight rain. and according to the medical examination that followed, she showed no signs of exposure or trauma. When questioned, Elizabeth gave responses that investigating officers found troubling and inconsistent. She claimed to have followed the children who lived in the walls to a special place where it's always cold. She described playing games with them, but could not or would not identify who these children were. The marshals checked out that morning, but not before Catherine Marshall provided a detailed statement describing what she called unnatural cold emanating from room 38 and the sound of children whispering even when no one was there. This pattern would repeat 5 more times between 1926 and 1932. Guests would report hearing children's voices coming from room 38, particularly between the hours of 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. 2 more adults disappeared from the room during this period: traveling salesman Howard Pickman in 1928 and nurse Margaret Bellows in 1931. Neither was ever found. Following Bellows' disappearance, Eliza Spalding made the decision to permanently close room 38, having it sealed and the door removed from hotel registries. The room remained locked for decades, with staff instructed never to mention it to guests. But sealing the room did not end the incidents. In 1957, the inn changed ownership, purchased by the Westbrook family, who undertook extensive renovations. Workers reported multiple unusual incidents when attempting to convert room 38 into a storage space. Tools would disappear only to reappear days later in different locations. Several workers refused to enter the room, claiming to feel watched by unseen eyes or experiencing unnatural cold spots, even in summer heat. Most telling is the statement from carpenter Henry Booth, who fled the property and refused to return after claiming he heard a circle of children whispering his name from inside the walls of room 38. When pressed for details, Booth described hearing at least 6 different children's voices, speaking in unison, but slightly out of sync, like an echo that doesn't quite match up. The renovation was eventually completed, but room 38 remained unused except for storage. The Westbrook family owned the property until 1998, with consistent reports from staff of strange occurrences centered around that section of the inn. What makes this case particularly compelling is the consistency of the reports across decades and ownership changes. Between 1926 and 2022, I've documented 37 separate incidents involving unexplained phenomena centered around room 38. Most commonly reported are: 1. Children's voices when no children are present. 2. Dramatic and localized temperature drops. 3. Objects moving without explanation. 4. Guests or staff feeling watched or followed. 5. Electronic equipment malfunctioning or recording static. In 2003, the property changed hands again, purchased by a couple interested in its reputation for paranormal activity. They reopened the inn and specifically marketed room 38 as haunted, allowing guests to stay there for the first time in over 70 years. This brings us to the most thoroughly documented incident in the case file. On October 17, 2004, paranormal investigators Daniel and Sarah Coleman checked into room 38 with the specific intention of documenting any unusual phenomena. They brought standard equipment for the time: digital audio recorders, infrared cameras, electromagnetic field detectors, and a digital thermometer. The Colemans set up their equipment at approximately 9:30 p.m. and began recording. Nothing unusual was noted until 1:18 a.m., when their audio equipment captured what they described as whispered conversations between multiple children. At 1:36 a.m., their digital thermometer recorded a sudden temperature drop from 68 degrees Fahrenheit to 42 degrees in under 3 minutes, isolated to a single corner of the room. At 2:47 a.m., Sarah Coleman reported feeling a small hand touch her arm while she was alone in the bathroom. The couple's audio recording from this time captured Sarah's startled reaction, followed by what sound analysts have identified as multiple children laughing. Though no children were present in the inn that night, according to the guest registry. The most significant evidence obtained came at 3:15 a.m., when both their primary and backup cameras captured a series of unusual light anomalies forming a rough circle in the center of the room. These anomalies, which appear as small bright orbs approximately the size of a child's head, moved in patterns consistent with a children's game similar to Ring Around the Rosie. At 3:33 a.m., all recording equipment simultaneously failed. When the devices reactivated approximately 7 minutes later, the infrared camera captured what appears to be small handprints appearing on the bathroom mirror. Handprints too small to belong to either of the Colemans. The couple remained in the room until morning, reporting no further incidents. Their evidence was submitted to multiple analysis firms with inconsistent conclusions. 2 separate audio experts verified the children's voices as authentic and not the result of contamination or editing. However, video analysts remain divided on the light anomalies, with some suggesting they could be the result of dust particles or equipment malfunction. The handprints were photographed by inn staff the following morning before being cleaned. Analysis confirmed they were actual handprints, not smudges or condensation patterns, size consistent with children between ages 6 and 10. I personally interviewed the Colemans in 2019 as part of my investigation into this case. Both maintain the authenticity of their experience, with Sarah adding an additional detail she had not previously disclosed. While the equipment was down, I distinctly heard a child's voice say, "We've been waiting for you to come back." The voice sounded familiar somehow, like a child I should recognize. This brings us to the historical research component of this investigation. When examining cases of this nature, I always look for historical context that might explain the reported phenomena. The Spalding Inn's history provided several potential connections. The property where the inn stands was previously the site of a small schoolhouse built in 1842. According to county records, this schoolhouse burned down in February 1873 during a severe winter storm. Contemporary newspaper accounts indicate the fire started during school hours, with conflicting reports about casualties. The White Mountain Chronicle from February 18, 1873, reports that all children were safely evacuated, while the competing Grafton County Gazette from the same date mentions tragic loss of young lives, without specifying numbers or names. Town death records from this period are incomplete, but I was able to locate a church registry listing funeral services for 6 children between February 19th and February 25th, 1873. The cause of death for all 6 is listed as misadventure, a common euphemism for accidental death in 19th century records. The names and ages of these children are Thomas Whitaker, age 8, Emma Bedford, age 7, Samuel Green, age 9, Rose Littlefield, age 6, William Hayes, age 10, Grace Montgomery, age 7. Particularly notable is that William Hayes was apparently the son of the school teacher, Margaret Hayes, who also perished in the fire according to her death certificate, dated February 20th, 1873. 2 years after the fire, construction began on what would become the Spalding Inn. Construction records indicate that salvageable materials from the schoolhouse ruins were incorporated into the new building, a common practice in that era to reduce costs. More significantly, Architectural plans show that room 38 is positioned directly above where the schoolhouse's main classroom would have been located. The connection between the historical tragedy and the reported phenomena became even more compelling when I discovered Professor William Harriman's research notes, which had been preserved in the Dartmouth College archives after his disappearance. Harriman had been researching local folklore regarding threshold spaces, locations where, according to both European and indigenous traditions, the boundary between our world and other realms becomes permeable under specific conditions. His notes specifically mention the Spalding Inn as a potential site for such a threshold, with particular attention to room 38. His final journal entry, dated June 17, 1926, the night before his disappearance, reads, "The pattern is unmistakable. 6 children lost. 6 voices heard. The temporal alignment occurs tonight, 53 years to the day. I must observe the phenomenon directly to confirm my hypothesis. If correct, the threshold will open at the hour of original transition, approximately 3:15 a.m. according to contemporary accounts. I have prepared the room according to specifications found in Montgomery's Liminal Spaces and Temporal Gateways. Should I not return, this journal serves as testament to the validity of my research. No further entries exist. Harriman was never seen again. Between 2004 and present day, room 38 has been occupied hundreds of times by guests seeking supernatural experiences. While many report nothing unusual, approximately 33% describe phenomena consistent with previous accounts.